All right, so I thought I'd give you a little update on the race truck project. I actually have been traveling a lot, but I've been sneaking in some time whenever I can. So I'll walk you through some of the latest and next steps. Old 196 is where I've been focusing most of my energy. Head is installed and torqued. Intake is installed and torqued. Valley pan cleaned, installed and torqued. I'm working on, I just took the steering box off. I'll be doing some cool oil cooler upgrades, so I'll walk you through that, and we'll be rebuilding and blueprinting an oil pump for more volume and more pressure. And those will be fun videos, but some of this stuff's just not compelling, so I've not been filming. But today's job is going to be to get the firewall clean, frame, because I've been cleaning the motor, so it's not repainted, but it's clean, grease free. But look at the frame, just thick, man. And again, to recap, I'll be cutting shock towers off, bump stop brackets off, body mount brackets off, and I'm just trying to do everything I can to prepare for the cage. That's the most significant project. Then slinging the axles will be pretty easy. But that cage is everything, so I need to mount everything to it, the shocks, all that kind of stuff. So, little update, afternoon.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm your surfer today, Owen. This is my board. She's a real, I put some miles on her. So today we're just gonna go out and, there's a really big women's comp today, so it's just ending, and I figured that since I don't have a girlfriend yet, I'm gonna go out and try and sneak in the hot babes, sneak them into my phone. I'm not gonna be surfing with my phone, but maybe afterward or something, we can grab dinner. That's how I would, So yeah, I'm just gonna go out, I'm gonna have a good time, and it's gonna be a blast. So see you there.
All right, welcome back. It's been a little bit for me, I don't know, maybe a week or so. And I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but a couple things I've done in the past week, and I just got back from SEMA, where I connected with a lot of great vendors, so that is good, and partners in the project, but it's bad because I was traveling. But I did degrease the firewall, installed by hand. Got the cylinder head on. I'm waiting for the push rods to come to replace those bent ones. Got the intake on. What I'm working on now is the water neck. My goal is just to do something every day. So today I think I'm gonna hammer out maybe the water pump, but definitely the thermostat housing and thermostat and water neck. So that'll be cool. I don't have an air compressor, so it's been a big challenge of this build, is working with, really more of a home garage situation than a full professional shop like we have out in Iowa. This die grinder has been great. Just use that abrasive wheel. Got this pretty cleaned up. One little thing, when you're doing your water neck, see that little hole right there? Make sure that a lot of times that hole is plugged with rust. Make sure you clean that out and orient your thermostat correctly. So I'm gonna go ahead and slap this on. I just did a thin coat of the right stuff, really thin, paper thin, on all surfaces of the gaskets. Made sure the thermostat was situated, settled into that little nest. On the 196, the inlets and water neck faces this way. The bypass tube comes over here, which 50-50 on taking I don't know if I'm gonna take the water pump housing off, probably not. But man, what I'm learning about race trucks is it's super expensive to go. It's expensive to build a truck. And the amount of preparation is oftentimes how well you'll do in finishing. So I probably will take the water pump housing off, inspect the water tube, and just, because you'd hate to get down there and have something wrong. I mean, I'll probably just pull the water pump first, see what kind of condition it's in. And I'll bring a lot of spares. But anyway, water neck's pretty good. Gotta get some hoses. I'm excited to get the push rods in so I can put the rocker arm assembly and button this up and get on to the fun stuff. All right, so I got the number 3 or 4 Phillips out of the pulleys. The water pump looks pretty new, but again, that would be unforgivable offense to not service it. But whether or not I take off the housing, feels pretty clean. I'll hit at least like the water tube or the radiator hose, bypass hose, inlets and outlets with a wire brush, at least wire wheel to be exact. I don't have an engine hoist, so I got to figure out how to probably just use a jack and a 2x4 on the motor mount somehow. But I wish I could do this full time. I love just wrenching on stuff. So it looks good, but I'm not going to use it. It's sat for a while. Bearing feels good though, and the impeller looks, this is like a new water pump. But I'll clean this up. I'll clean up this surface in here. And everything looks good. So I might pull there's no evidence of the water tube leaking. So I don't know, man. If it ain't broke, don't fix it or check it. I don't know. Let's keep going on the water pump at least. All right, welcome back to the shop. Today, we got Owen with me. So we're gonna get this front axle all off, cut the shock towers off, cut the bump stop brackets off. Tell you what I did. Sorry I didn't film it. I know these videos are really terrible, but replaced, just re-gasketed and cleaned up and surfaced the oil filter housing. No modifications. This bolt was stripped out. It was a 3/8 bolt, so I tapped it out to 7/16. Retightened that. I did paint it while I was at it. The next big task for me is to put a bung for the oil cooler in this oil passage. Now, if you have any comments about that, feel free to comment. That was the oil cooler manufacturer, CBR. Their recommendation was just use an oil pressure sending unit port. I'm going to drill it out to a 1/4 MPT, which would be like equivalent to a -6. So we'll see how that works. And otherwise, again, we're just going to be cutting and unbolting this front axle. Dan from Binder Boneyard is building me a Dana 44, 456 open differential, chrome ollie axle shafts, just tidied up. We are going to be putting in a CPT reverse shackle kit, so all that we'll track along and get some video. While we're looking at it, I'm working with Canton oil pans, and they're going to make me a custom oil pan based off of this bad boy. I don't know if you've seen this before, but this is the oil pan that was custom made from the Sherman Balch Bayshore 3 race truck. As you can see, it's pretty awesome. Number one, these are drain back ports that went straight from the valve covers. Pretty cool. Story goes, on a particular race, I don't know which one of the score races, a bump stop broke and the axle bottomed out. The shocks, I don't know if it broke a shock bracket, but it also damaged the oil pan. Splooged a little some stuff in there, some epoxy or something, and back to racing. So I am going to make, Can's gonna make me probably 3 oil pans, maybe 4. So if you want a race oil pan, hit me up. Back to work. All right, so got the front axle out, leaf springs out. We're gonna get ready to cut the hangers off. Again, the bump stop brackets and the shock mounts, because we're gonna run that all off the tubing, except for the bump stops. But what's interesting is this is an original 196 4-speed truck. As far as I know, originally from California. But what's interesting is it has 354s. Normally, I've seen 196 trucks with 409s, like 410s, 373s, but 354s is pretty high for, like John Denver high, for high meaning numerically high, gear ratio high. Yeah, it's opposite of what you think. Like 410 is a low gear, so high meaning higher speed oriented. And I can tell just from the axle tag right here on the diff. So anytime you want to know your gear ratio, the easiest way is to look at that. Sometimes I've seen them be changed or missing, but this truck's clearly pretty original. It's super greasy. I'm trying to knock some of the grease off it before I have to manhandle it at the front axle. So anyway, we're gonna carry the front axle out of the way. Again, we're not using any of this front axle because all the parts are new. So we'll ship this back to Iowa and use it on a restoration. It's better like it's driving out of there. This is coming down the looks. We should have rolled on the rotors now. Excellent. It's nothing better than out of sight, out of mind. Not the right place for it, but it's out of. So now we're gonna clean up, sweep up, start cutting. We'll lay down fresh cardboard. Chowing on the Tootsie Roll. Owen's favorite candy is a Tootsie Roll.
It's so good.
It's pretty odd for a kid, but like most 80-year-old dudes love Tootsie Rolls. Right. And have you noticed Tootsie Rolls, the regular little ones keep getting smaller?
Yeah.
They're like the size of a firecracker now.
Yeah, because for dieting.
So I'm super excited about this project. Like really, I am. I think I've said this before in this video maybe, but I find myself going to bed thinking about this project, and I wake up thinking about this project, and just Baja, the enormity of the task, the historical precedent set by other international scout Baja racers. But I wonder how many of you guys can relate to the feeling that I keep tearing this thing apart, and eventually it's gonna have to go back together. Now, fortunately, like the motor, I've been kind of micro projecting it, like, so the motor is almost good to go. But the more I cut off, because now I want to take the body off. And I'm like, man, that's just one step closer to full demise. When I was in high school, I had this C10 pickup. And it was like 94% together. All I needed to do was get a rear drive shaft cut, because I put this big block in it and it was pretty fun. But I never put that drive shaft in it. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna restore this truck. Took it all apart, and that was the last it never got put back together. So that fear is kind of always in the back of my mind. But I know that I'm capable of calling for help when needed. So anyway, start cutting some brackets off. All right, so a couple tips. Always hold your grinder, like the handle down, like you want the sparks flying toward the handle. You don't really want the sparks shooting up, because then the grinder grabs and it can frag out a wheel. So after we got everything rough cut, use a hammer as your friend, score it, knock it off. Then I'm gonna hit it with a wire brush, a wire wheel, because flap discs like this are great for cleaning welds like this, but they're terrible for cleaning grease. So like you see in here, there's still grease. So I'm gonna wire wheel that so that it's clean, and then this will clean it up. Back to time lapse. All right, so I think I'm gonna wrap up the video. I'll just make it short. I told you I really just need to make like a weekly video. I know it seems a little chaotic right now, but I do have a plan. I think what I'm gonna do is get a big sheet of cardboard and write out the plan, because there's so many little parts to major parts. For example, in the steering system, I have to weld on a plate, weld the frame under here, put a straight steer on, get the steering box, a power steering cooler, new pump, reservoir. There's a bunch of sub parts to each system, as you know. So anyway, fun day at Granite. Let me show you what we did. Pretty clean. I'm gonna go back through and like probably sand this frame, clean it up, because now that I like painted this bracket, of course I should have done this after. I should have cut this stuff off before I painted this, but oh well. I kind of like the look of cleaning stuff up, so I think I might paint the motor. I don't know, paint the frame rails after I'm done. We'll see. So next session of grinding is cutting off these hangers. This hanger, Owen didn't get to that. So we can get to the CPT reverse shackle. That'll be the next major focus of the next video, is getting the reverse shackle kit and the front end hung and the leaf springs hung. And then we'll install the Anything Scout rear diff over there. Again, the cage is so critical, because like the shocks are gonna come through the bed up to probably like here, you know. So, and I got some cool ideas. I mean, I'm really just replicating a lot of stuff from the Bay Shore. You hear it over there? Dogs barking. It's a crazy part of town. All right, until next time. All right, so we got our special delivery, one PSC. This is who we use for all of our steering box rebuilds. Sorry for the noise outside. It's a typical occurrence over here. But anyway, got the steering box. And the reason I need to temporarily mock it up is because I'm going to be using a PSC race column with a quick disconnect steering wheel, or on this side. And they want to know a measurement from the steering box input to the steering wheel. And I like the orientation of the stock wheel. So I won't use the stock. I'm not going to use this column or the wheel, but I'm going to take a measurement. So I'm going to throw the box in, get that measurement, and then send that number off and get our column coming. All right, so as part of this, I'm just going to go over some of the steering stuff that we're doing. I don't know if we'll find out if it holds up, because the other race truck that we have is all completely different. And I'll get into that some other time. But basically we have one of our outer frame support brackets, and really what you want to do is just weld, I'll show you in a second. We've got a straight steer brace, steering box brace, that should be sufficient. PSC box, and now what I'm going to do is just measure per PSC's spec from the input shaft to the steering wheel. All right, so I'm showing 46 inches, so I'll go report that to PSC, and I'll show you what I mean real quick. So one of the weak spots on the frame is this weld right here. They separate. Not only do they crack up in here, but they also crack here. So I'll weld this seam, weld this on this plate, and then bolt on the straight steer stabilizer, and be off to the races. So that's today's report on the motor. I'm going to be working on creating a tap, a port for our oil cooler. Then I got to go through this distributor, make sure the advance is working, new cap, new rotor, just clean it up, and then I'll reinstall that. But getting closer every day. So I did it. I decided to paint the motor. And again, you have to remember, let's recall that the engine was rebuilt, supposedly has 35,000. Everything that I've seen, that seems to be valid. The bent push rods was because of varnished gas, like just varnish that formed around the valve guide seals, and that seized those up enough to bend the push rods. So that's fixed. Valve job's done. New water pump, new fuel pump, all the accessories are new. So I figured it wasn't really leaking oil. I replaced like the obvious gaskets, valve cover, intake, valley pan. I didn't do the front main seal. It wasn't leaking. And I'm trying to keep this thing as simple and affordable as possible, but also reliable. So, and I just figured, like when you open the hood of the race truck, I want it to look cool. But mostly just be clean. So when you have a clean engine, you can tell when there's leaks and that kind of thing. So I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. I'm putting just some accessories back on it, not going crazy, quick and dirty. I'm gonna put the fuel pump back on and we'll keep cranking. All right, so I'm just gonna give you a little status update. Some of this might be repetitive. Got this fitting in, this is -8. It's gonna go to my oil cooler. That is what CBR recommended. I'm not an expert at racing oil coolers, but that's what they recommended, so that's what I'm going for. Oil cooler will get mounted up in this spot in here once the cage and everything's done. Got power steering, lower bracket on, alternator brackets on. I'll obviously set it up once I get a belt. I was gonna put I got the replacement push rods, so those are no longer bent. Oiled all those, installed them, and I'm just putting this valve cover on for keep it clean. Header is temporarily on. I'm trying to avoid temporarily putting a lot of things on, but it's just like I don't have a lot of shelving space, so it's easier to keep stuff on the motor. But I was gonna install the rocker arm assembly, but let me show you what I discovered. These are the ones that came off this motor, and I was putting them on and I noticed, see what I see? Like right there, there's a crack. Right there, there's a crack. And then I started looking at them. There's just some odd wear on them. And let's see. It's hard to focus, but that's actually a crack right there. So now I'm just like, dude, these are shot. So I'm ditching these. These are the best style. These are called boat style. And 9 stand is the most stable for the high RPMs we're gonna see. 4,000 RPMs nonstop. So I got some shipped from Ben. Thanks, Ben, from the Iowa shop is shipping me out some. I'm just working through the PSC power steering pump. I'll kind of show you that. A lot of this work is tough because it's just tedious and I don't feel like it films very well. I don't want to just jabber on to the camera. So you may notice that the oil pan is not clean, and I'm sorry if I already mentioned this, but I am going to get a custom oil pan made with some baffles, a windage tray. So I'm working on that. Hopefully Canton comes through for me. And but I will drop this oil pan blueprint out the oil pump. I'll show you that process, most of it in video. And yeah, just mostly just blueprint it, rebuild it. Anyway, just gonna keep tooling away at this power steering pump. She's looking good, man. Stoked on this motor. Then remember, I gotta take the body off, pull the trans, check the clutch, all that kind of good stuff. So there's tons of work to do. Desperately trying to get it engine, drivetrain done, suspension done in the next month so that I can get the cage done, and then I can start installing the radiator, start wiring, and do the steering system, all that kind of good stuff. So tons of work to do. Sorry for the bad video quality, but I'm having a lot of fun. All right, so here's maybe the last video clip of this episode. This has been an interesting experience because I'm used to the V8s, and on a V8, the power steering runs on this the third pulley on the, sorry, I gotta jank up. But 196s, only have a 2-pulley bottom, and they only run a single alternator belt. And I love, one of my favorite things about the IH platform is the dual alternator belt. So we have a anything Scout high amp 120 or 40 amp alternator. 3 pulleys here. So I took a Scout 2 V8 3-pulley bottom, but the power steering pump was set up back to run on this middle pulley. So that took a bit of effort and some spacers. So I ran a spacer here. I had to run a spacer back there. No spacer here. I kept the spacer there because there used to be a spacer here. But now I just need to file or grind off this corner right here, machine that down so that this arm, because the arm is hitting, you can see it hitting right there. So anyway, trying to make it race ready and trying to make it better. I think dual belts is pretty important for the water pump and alternator. If you lose a power steering belt, it's not the end of the world. Anyway, until next time, motor's just about ready. We'll keep cranking. This is going to be a multi-part. You'll probably be bored of watching it by the time we're done. But little bits at it. I'm doing this by myself, and sometimes I get Owen to help me. But oh yeah, I welded that on. It's cool. But I got to get going on the suspension. I'm feeling stressed about that. So we'll keep cranking.